Miami's top signee, Jackson Cantwell, has just been named the most outstanding player in America. He's going to make an instant impact at the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. On this loaded episode, we're going to talk about the Texas A&M game and Miami's hopeful biggest advantages. How did the Canes get it done on the road against the Aggies? Unfortunately, not surprisingly, but unfortunately, Miami is losing receiver Nathaniel Ray Joseph into the transfer portal. We'll talk about what could be next for him. We'll talk about a couple of Miami's top assistant coaches, your coordinators. So Corey Hetherman is a finalist for the Broyles Award. Shannon Dawson is in the mix for a head coaching job. But let's talk Jackson Cantwell as we bring on our boy Blue, the man, the myth, the legend, Larry Blustein. Now, Blue, this is the first time ever that the Gatorade National Player of the Year award is given to an offensive lineman. You know you're really good when you play, the least glamorous position in football, and they still cannot deny that you're the best player in the country. Do you agree with that assessment that the Gatorade committee has made on Jackson Cantwell?
Can't go wrong. 6', 7.5", 320 pounds, athletic and dominant, and yeah, he's a generational type of guy. You don't get him that big, that athletic, that agile, and with a great background that his mom and dad have had, Olympic, shot putters. And yeah, I know he's ever since, he came out as a sophomore a couple of years ago, and everyone was, talking about him and, how strong he was and how athletic he was and how fast he ran for a big man, thinking, well, this is one of those guys that, I see it a lot in wrestling where these kids start out as like 8-year-olds or 7 years old, and they're just so proficient, and they're just, they shoot and they do things, and all of a sudden they're heavyweights and they're doing the same thing. And, yeah, that's a lot like him. He grew up in that athletic background and, played several sports. And so, no, that's no surprise. He's a plug and play type of kid, a lot to learn at the college level, no doubt, especially at the line position. And usually it's it's probably one of the toughest positions to project into the future. But certainly everybody sees what they see, and especially getting an opportunity to win a prestigious award like that when there was trillions of skilled kids and receivers and DBs and linebackers and, defensive tackles making, 200 tackles. So certainly, that's high praise.
Yeah, and again, to be able to kind of break that barrier for an award that's never gone to an offensive lineman before, like, it goes to show you just how good Jackson Cantwell is. It was cool they had Hall of Famer and former Pro Bowler Joe Thomas surprised him with the award. I thought that was neat, the way that they did that. And so, all right, Blue, my follow-up question to you on Jackson Cantwell is, this young man, he's going to be on campus in about a month. He's an early enrollee coming up in January, and the expectation is that he can follow in the footsteps of Francis Mauigoa, who's going to be on his way to the NFL. A lot of us, and obviously this is just a projection because the young man is not even on campus yet, but a lot of us expect him to be probably a true freshman starter at right tackle, the same way CeCe was 3 years ago. Do you think he can make that same impact? And I don't know, are there any comparisons you would make between Cantwell and Francis Mauigoa?
Well, other than to answer your latter question, I think other than maybe being, just a dominant, player who, who's athletic and gets out quick and has great strength and, but the size wise, I mean, he's got CC by like 4 inches.
Yeah.
So yeah, uh, he's an anomaly, definitely. And yeah, the very fact that he's coming in, I mean, we look, at, Fitzgerald, who came in late. But there was a guy too at a different position. I mean, there's a secondary position. This is somebody who's going to be right in the trenches, and certainly, I think the best thing about it is he'll have those 4 months, to mature as a person. Not so much as a football player, but as a person. Remember, he's an 18-year-old kid. 17, 18-year-old kid coming in to an environment where you have guys like Messidor, who's leaving at 23 years old. So, there's a big difference there. But I think that the fact that he's coming in early, it's going to be a position of need because of the fact that they're losing a lot of key linemen in this cycle. But, they've groomed a lot of guys that are going to be, battling with him, the Buchanans, and certainly Campbell and a lot of those guys who played a key role in their development. So it's going to be a learning period. He's definitely going to be, I think he's going to be one of those guys that every day during the, during January and into February, right before the start of spring, is going to learn a whole lot. And I think when we see him in the spring, we're going to see a guy that's definitely on that escalator towards success.
We're joined here by Larry Blustein. Blue, let's talk about a player you covered in high school, probably through youth football. Nathaniel Ray Joseph, third-year receiver at Miami, but he made the announcement yesterday, and he's made the decision that he's going to be leaving Miami through the transfer portal, and he's not going to wait until after the playoff. He's probably had already kind of opted out and wasn't going to play in the playoff game anyway. Obviously, I know Ray has represented the University of Miami. He has represented the community, being a Miami Edison former player so well. And honestly, I love Ray's attitude, and I'm sorry to see him go. But Blue, it's fully understandable. I said this about Ray. He was in the right place at the wrong time. Because, obviously he had decided Miami was the right place for him out of high school 3 years ago. But just the timing could not have been worse, because for your first 2 years, you're behind Xavier Restrepo playing your position. It's one of the most statistically productive receivers in Miami Hurricanes history. And then when Restrepo leaves for the NFL, in comes Malachi Toney, who's one of the most dynamic true freshmen in Miami history. So it makes perfect sense for Ray, and I wish Ray Joseph all the best. This is a player you covered for I don't know how many years, Blue. I'm sure Rhett Lashley is probably listening to this, because most of the former Miami players end up at SMU. What sort of a player is his next spot getting out of Ray Joseph?
Well, if you remember, too, he was committed to Clemson. And they had to, and I still remember the day that everything changed. It was during the spring. It was a spring game that Edison played up in Palm Beach County, and Lashley spent basically the entire day there just showing his face. And there was Clemson coaches there, too, as well. This is somebody who's really special in a lot of ways. I know the family real well, part of Flex Joseph, who played at FIU, and, Hilton, Hilton Joseph, who was a quarterback at North Miami. The Joseph family, very big in the community, all Edison people there, the father, mother, everybody went to Edison. And not only did he, as you mentioned, get it done in the athletic arena, but he was an outstanding student, scholar athlete. And, and that was something that the entire family had been. And, he got here, and certainly everybody thought, hey, this is a kid who's going to be meteoric. He's fast. He could do things. And, but, things don't work out. Sometimes they don't work out. And he probably saw the writing on the wall, especially with the talent that Miami has at that slot position. And, remember to bring in a lot of other key receivers in this next class. And there's always that, the portal. So he'll land on his feet. And he'll be, whether it be SMU or wherever, I think he'll do really well. Like I said, he's a team player all the way, and he's a great kid. And he's a guy that you don't ever have to worry about. From a standpoint where high school coaches will always talk positively about what he did, at the high school level. He's carried it over. So I wish him nothing but the best. I've known him and his family forever, and great people, class act. And I wish Ray nothing but the best, and he'll resurface and he'll find a place, just like, Brashard Smith did, who's on the Kansas City Chiefs roster.
Yeah.
And, speed kills, and he's got it.
He certainly does. All right. Well, when we come back, maybe we're getting a little bit nervous because one of Miami's top assistant coaches is up for a head coaching job. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, I'm telling you, the absolute best gift. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You could preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there, guys. No apps to figure it out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Folks, there are so many great options to gift this to. Grandparents, parents, any newlyweds in your wife, your spouse, hello, anyone who loves photos. Endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app are so easy to get up there. Add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's opened. Guys, it's a holiday gift that actually gets used. It's not forgotten in some drawer. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by using auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning Locked On Canes at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you're a true diehard Miami fan, the Everydayer All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes. I do something called the Canes Colada every single morning, an exclusive newsletter, and 15% off discount to the Locked On merch store. Head to lockedoncanes.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and unlock all access. You can also find the link in the show notes below. We're joined here by the great Larry Blustein. All right, so Blue, and again, I feel so selfish when I talk about this because, like, at some point, it's a good thing when your assistant coaches and your coordinators are up for head coaching jobs because it means they're doing a great job. It means they're getting a promotion somewhere. But I'm also selfish, and I want to keep Shannon Dawson here. Initially, he was rumored to be in the mix for the Tulane job, but they ended up promoting from within, so we dodged the Tulane bullet. But now Shannon Dawson is reportedly up for the Coastal Carolina head coaching job. But he's one of many names, though, Blue. Garrett Riley, the OC at Clemson, is also in the mix. Missouri State head coach Ryan Beard, Navy OC Drew Cronick, Washington State, former Washington State head coach Nick Rolovich is in the mix. Shannon Dawson also in that mix. First of all, like, is Coastal Carolina, like, obviously a head coaching job is a head coaching job, but do you think, is that the sort of job that you think could pull Dawson away?
Stepping stone type of job, a job that get your feet wet, sort of like everybody was, early on in the Penn State deal. Brian Hartline was rumored, but then I think you kind of take a step back and say, well, wait a minute. Brian's never had a head coaching job, so now he gets the USF job, and it's sort of like that stepping stone. Let's see what he does as a head coach, and I think somebody like Shannon Dawson would benefit by going to not everybody could be Manny Diaz, and your first head coaching job is a Power 4 job. I mean, it's not in the cards, but yeah, you know what? But that's the way it is. And now with the little tumbler will even probably fall even further now with Sharon Moore getting canned at Michigan. And now, and somebody's going to have to take his place, and then somebody's going to have to take that person's place, and that trickled down. And there's you look at Iowa State, and a couple of Matt Campbell takes the Penn State job, and I mean it's a whole different deal. But if he gets it, like you said, it's almost like a thing that you don't want to happen, but it shows you it's a signal of success in your program where people are after your coaches. And, and as well as I do, Mario Cristobal every year had talked about, well, we need to upgrade here, we need to upgrade there. And he got to the point offensively and defensively where he's got the people that he wants. And, so be it. If it happens, either you promote from within, I mean, there's some offensive minds on Miami, or you go outside and, somebody that Mario has been comfortable with in the past that, so if it happens, and I'm sure, you're prepared. He's prepared. I'm sure as we speak, as his name surfaces, I'm sure, Mario Cristobal and is looking around and saying, you know what, if we should lose Shannon, we need somebody of that type, to run that offense that we're gearing, their recruiting is geared to that offense now. When they get their receivers, they get their linemen, everybody, their running backs, everybody has to be recruited to that type. You're not going to take like a wishbone type of kid and bring him into a spread, offense. So yeah, if he goes, more power to him. He's done a great job. He's developed some people. He took a lot of heat early on this season for being vanilla and being repetitive and, tackle to tackle running. And I know some of the media people, but you gotta understand in any profession, and as well as I do in any business, that there's a method to the madness. I mean, you kind of, you maybe do things unorthodox to many laymen, but for people in the profession, they understood how he was going about things. And, I hate to see him go. Good dude, was very instrumental in recruiting Darian Coleman from Orlando Jones, who we'll see on Saturday afternoon when they play American Heritage Plantation, the state championship game. And also Luke Nickel, who was just an amazing quarterback coming out of Milton, Georgia. So, yeah, and you look at guys like Gerard Pringle. Remember when they were recruiting a lot of these, offensive studs over the last couple of years, they come back into the room, they show film, and, not only do they got to get the approval of Mario Cristobal, but they got to get his approval on, hey, this is a kid that definitely fits. So, integral part when you're an offensive coordinator.
No doubt. And Miami's defensive coordinator, Blue, I don't think we're going to lose him this year, thank goodness.
No.
Corey Hetherman, who, I mean, he transformed Miami's defense the same way he did with Minnesota's last year. So this guy's a miracle worker. He's now a finalist, one of, I think, 5 finalists for the Broyles Award. And I think he's got a really good chance to win that award, Blue. Where have you seen, in your mind, Corey Hetherman making the biggest impact on Miami's defensive turnaround this year?
Well, he's not that guy who just sits back and calls the plays, and he's the linebacker coach. So he's got hands-on, and I think that's important. A lot of everybody respects him. The assistant coach, they all respect him. And, and I think somebody who's learning a lot from him, and it's kind of funny, because of the fact that the experience that he has as a player is JT. And, I think that, you look at somebody like a Jason Taylor, who I think could be the next guy up if Hetherman, departs over the next year or so, because I think that he, I saw him do the job when he was at St. Thomas Aquinas, albeit it's high school, but come on, it's a game. And you develop, and he's played it at a high level. He's been around it at a high level. So I think I think all the coaches are drinking in what Hetherman brings, because that's that tree. That's that Greg Schiano tree. That's that a tree that somebody like Mario Cristobal came under too. Earlier in his career. Greg Schiano is a defensive mind that a lot of people don't realize was one of the better defensive coaches of his time, and still does a great job. But anytime you're in that type of environment, certainly he deserves it. He deserves it for what he did. He's an intense guy. The guys play off of him. The defense was horrible last year, so they made changes, as you mentioned. They made changes basically everywhere but JT. So, I think Corey's a good dude, very easy to relate to. A lot of the kids, like I said, he takes time to understand. And when you have studs, like a couple of first-round draft picks, like Bain and potentially, somebody like a Messidor, and let's even go further with Jacoby Thomas. And, in those kids, remember, he inherited some really big time secondary guys that had to establish themselves. So, I think it's been a great fit all the way around for the school. Kudos to Mario for, you got to give him, everybody always, points out the negative things about him, but let's talk about how he assembled this entire staff offensively and defensively.
Yeah, this is certainly the best staff that he's had at Miami,
by far.
And I think one of the better staffs we've had at the U in a really, really long time. But when we come back, all eyes are going to be on College Station, Texas. College game day is going to be there. It's going to be a noon kickoff on December 20th. The entire world will be watching. I'm going to pick Blue's brain on where Miami will have, hopefully, their biggest advantage against the Aggies. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. We're only getting started with FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything just feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting, because you're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump right into that moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet things like next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Thank you for making this network number one. Make sure for your next listen, you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I have been talking a lot about the Notre Dame ACC beef, all that dramatic stuff. Locked On ACC is available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. All right, Larry Blustein, we've had a few days, 4 days now, to kind of start digesting some of the matchups between Miami and the Texas A&M Aggies. Is there anything you see that could be an advantage for Miami in this football game on December 20th?
Well, Miami's played extremely well over the last month, and I think that's important. They went on the road to a couple of hostile environments already, and I think that you take a look at, College Station, well over 100,000 and blah, 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 and I understand that. But, when you're playing in your own conference and going to Pitt and a team that was very much in the hunt when they went there, and Miami pretty much won convincingly and showed, I think that was what really got them into the playoffs. Going to Pitt, a team had been 6-1 in the conference and had as much to gain as Miami. It wasn't just, one of those trips, but I think they're playing extremely well. Obviously, a quarterback like Marcel Reed certainly poses a lot. I mean, they talk a lot on, the Trey Zune came out and, who's Bane, who's Mesidor. Okay, that's neat. But they're good up front, and it's going to be a challenge. But I think what happens is when they look at the way that Texas A&M has played over the last month and the way that they've played over the last month, I think that gives them a lot of confidence. And they got playmakers, and you got, somebody, as we said, some of these young players that Miami's unleashed on offense, and the playmakers on defense. I think they come into the game, Casey Concepcion's great. Obviously, we saw him last year too in the ACC, and he's great. And Mario Craver's really, really good. But I think when it comes down to it, I think Miami's got their game plan. It's one of these things that I believe that, coming into the game, Miami had to, for better words, Miami had to beg their way into where they're at. They had a campaign, they had hey, we belong here, and it's sort of like what I kind of equated to is when you have, in baseball, when you have teams that have to fight their way into the playoffs, they're usually the most dangerous teams because they're ready. They played that caliber for a long time. So you look at Miami's last 4 games, they've played at a high level just to get into where they're at. And I think that gives them an advantage. And, when I look back at South Carolina game and against A&M, and I said this, I was on a show the other day in Texas, and I said, I'll be honest with you, if Miami gets ahead 30-3, it'll be 70. They'll put 70 on the board. I mean, they're not going to take their foot off the gas. And, and I don't expect that to happen, that they're going to fall behind like that. But listen, they keep pointing that Miami, lost this game to Louisville or this game to SMU, but because of the fact that that A&M came back against South Carolina, we don't hear much about that. But that could have been one of the most, that was a FSU loss, for Alabama. That's how bad that would have been. And Miami doesn't have those horrible losses. Louisville worked out fairly well. They're going to a nice bowl game. SMU seemed to, they were right in the hunt until Cal upset them. So it's not like Miami has any bad losses, believe me. So, and A&M went and beat Notre Dame at South Bend, and that was a great win. Just like Miami had a win here. And but I think losing to Texas and playing that South Carolina game gave Miami confidence. So, they're not indestructible. And I think Miami goes into College Station and definitely battles them all the way. And I think that I don't think anything different. I just think that Miami's playing at a level right now. And I think the committee saw that, rather than just put in a team that, that had that was just an average team. They saw, well, Miami's, high profile. They were on TV 9 times nationally this year. Yeah. So everybody kind of got a chance to see them too.
I think you make some great points, not only about the trajectories that Miami finished the season playing great and Texas A&M didn't look great at the end of the year, but the mindset you bring up, because Miami essentially the final month of their season was playoff football for them, because Texas A&M had margin for error at the end of the year. Miami did not. So Miami already has that playoff mindset going in. I know, Blue, you've been all over the state playoffs in high school and the state championship games. You've been all over and will be all over Pitbull Stadium and FIU. What are you looking for this weekend? And tell people what they can expect from your next radio show, the most informative radio show in the country, Mondays on WQAM.
Well, we're coming off I think one of our best shows, and you were a part of it, and we thank you on last week because
thank you.
We had a lot of really good key athletes on, some coaches as well, and to kind of set the tone. As I said, you take a look at the 2 games today featuring South Florida teams in Chaminade, who's making their 10th consecutive state championship appearance. Amazing. Wow. And then you have St. Thomas Aquinas, who's looking for their 7th consecutive state championship, and certainly a lot of young players on both of those teams. Last night we had a chance to watch J.J. Sparks, a University of Miami signee for this cycle of 2026. His team lost to a really good Sarasota Cardinal Mooney team who's loaded with talent. A lot of kids on both sides of the ball, but you got great games coming up as well on Friday. You have West Broward, West Boca with Miami signee Javion Mallory, who we also had on our show, a running back who I think fits in, the scheme. You have a lot of young kids on West Broward, who's making their first ever appearance in the state title game. And then that night game is going to be epic because you have Miami Northwestern loaded with talent and potential kids that Nick Lanier, who could, eventually end up at Miami, local guy. And as he's, but Miami's receiving class in this crazy 2026 signee list is just nuts. With Milan Paris, who I think is one of the best in the country, and certainly a kid from St. Augustine that we've seen quite a bit in Samari and Wingo. So yeah, it's going to be great. And then Saturday you get a chance to see, for the fans down in South Florida, come see Miami signee Darian Coleman as he tries to as I said the other day, it's a matchup of last year where a certain Miami player this year, Malachi Toney, took over in that game as a substitute quarterback who went 15 of 15 and led them to the state title. So there's some really good football being played. And then obviously you get a chance to, see a lot of people down here. And then our show will be next Wednesday. We'll kind of wrap that up, and then we'll get ready for the following week where you have Under Armour and all these other events that a lot of Miami signees will be taking place in, if they're not on campus already. So yeah, it's going to be good. This is good month, good time of year. This is, it'll be tiring over the next couple of days, to spend all day down there. But you know what? It's worth it. It's only 4 days, and something that we look forward to and work for all year. So it's, this is ending my 55th year of doing this, and it never gets old.
Well, that's awesome. And Blue is the absolute man. Make sure you check out his radio show on WQAM. Check him out on the Sixth Ring podcast on 5 Reasons Sports Network. Check him out on X at Prep Red Zone FL. Want to thank all the everydayers for tuning in. Make sure to smash the like button, subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.